Hi there. Let's have a chat about the full moon in Taurus happening on November 15th, 2024. Whenever we're talking about a full moon, we are talking about this idea of our previous actions, our previous choices, our previous responsibilities that we have taken on, sort of catching up with us and bearing the fruits of our labor. If we have acted in a way that wasn't really aligned with what we wanted or what we needed, then we will see the consequences of that during this time. On the other hand, if we are acting from a place that is more aligned, from a place that doesn't come from the ego, for example, we will also see the consequences from those actions, and they will probably be some more positive fruits that we see come to light. Because the moon is in the sign of Taurus, in general, we will be feeling this sense, or this need, I should say, for stability and comfort. We will be feeling this need to focus on peace and focus on our bodies, our animal instincts, and our senses. A full moon in Taurus usually says or shows us all of the places where we have chosen to act for the sake of comfort. We have chosen the path of life which offered us the most stability, the path of life which offered us the most peace and comfort. And during this full moon, we start to see that the consequences of that come to light. We could start to realize that certain areas of our life, we have stepped too much towards the area of stability and comfort, and are maybe finding ourselves bored, are finding ourselves feeling a little bit uninspired, or maybe even stuck. Venus, which is the planet that rules the sign of Taurus, is not in the most comfortable position during this full moon. Venus will be squaring the North and the South node. And whenever we're talking about the North and the South node, we are talking about our soul's evolution and what our soul needs in order to grow during this lifetime. So especially during this full moon, because we see the North and the South node part of the conversation, you might be looking at where you have chosen comfort, stability, peace, over what your soul actually needs. That might be more challenging, and you might have decided for now, oh, well, actually, I'm going to go with the easy route. The moon is also conjunct Uranus. And, if you watched my monthly horoscope, you would have heard me say that this can bring an element of surprise or some sort of unexpectedness to it. And while that is true, I also want to highlight that the moon being conjunct Uranus is also asking us to further consider, how can we define our own comfort? How can we redefine what we consider to be peace and stability? Not to follow society's standard of, well, you need to be married to have a stable relationship. Well, you need to have a 9-to-5 job to have a stability in your income. Those are just some examples, but you might find yourself that during this full moon, as these ideas are coming up of where am I compromising for the sake of comfort, you might also be finding this need, this desire to define what stability and comfort means for you as an individual. Now let's get to the rising sign horoscopes, so you can find out in what area of your life you might have been choosing comfort and stability over what your soul actually needs. So for Aries rising or Aries sun signs, the full moon on November 15th is taking place in your second house of finances and self-esteem. During this full moon, you might be seeing the fruits coming to light, the fruits ripening And these are the fruits that you planted when you were seeking for some comfort and some stability. Perhaps there was a certain opportunity that you took because it would give you a good income, or perhaps a certain opportunity you took because it would be safe on your self-confidence, comforting on your self-confidence. And again, this doesn't have to mean that it was a bad move, but during this full moon, you might be really reflecting, is this really pushing me towards where I need to go? Is this really satisfying me on a deeper level? Or am I playing it safe here? And again, you might also be really thinking about, what is my individual definition of what stability means to me? How can I feel provided for? How can I feel like I have the financial means to take care of myself? And don't be afraid if that answer is different from what the rest of society says. Next up, we have Taurus rising or Taurus sun signs. And for you, Taurus, this moon might be quite important because it's happening in your first house. You might especially be wondering where you've been playing it safe when it comes to your identity. Have you perhaps been dressing in a way that just feels comfortable? Have you been expressing yourself and showing your leadership in a way that provides you stability, but maybe it does not very exciting, that maybe feels a little bit stifling now? During this full moon, don't be afraid to look at your own individual expression. What is your identity and how can you make that unique and not something that's according to society's standards? Let's have a chat about Gemini rising or Gemini sun signs. The full moon in Taurus is taking place in your 12th house, and you might be especially thinking about all of the places, all of the things you're holding on to, all of the ideas and beliefs you're holding on to for the sake of comfort. Are there any things that you need to let go from your life because they make you feel stuck? They might feel challenging, but you know that deep down, they will make you feel so much more alive and they will feel so much more intentional and aligned. Some of these things that you might need to let go of are also surrounding your spiritual practices. Is there a place or is there something when it comes to your spirituality where you're playing it safe? Maybe there's a really unique type of movement or type of meditation that you've wanted to try, but maybe haven't because, again, you were seeking some comfort, some stability. Don't be afraid, again, as I'm telling all of the zodiac signs, don't be afraid to define for yourself what spirituality and letting go means apart from what society defines it as. Next up, we have Cancer rising and Cancer sun signs. And for you, Cancer, this full moon on November 15th will be taking place in your 11th house. There are a couple of ways that this could play out. One of them is that there's sort of ripening of your friendship commitments. Perhaps you're finding out that you have been playing it safe with your friends, that you have maybe been holding on to certain friendships or being afraid to really show yourself in certain friendships for the sake of it's just something that felt comfortable. Another way that this full moon could also play out is that you are focused on your future goals and your future ambitions. And it might be becoming really apparent to you that you have made certain choices in the past, certain decisions about what your future is going to look like. And now you realize that perhaps some of them were not challenging enough. They were not invigorating enough for your soul. Instead, you might find out that some of them you made just because you wanted some comfort and some stability. And there might be something there that you need to adjust. Next, let's talk about Leo rising and Leo sun signs and what they can expect for this full moon in Taurus. So for Leo, the full moon is happening in your 10th house. And you might be coming or facing the consequences of actions you've taken in your career. And specifically, it might be coming really obvious places where you have played it safe in your career, decisions you have made, things you have said in the past that came from this place of, well, I just want things to be easy, to be safe, to be the way that they've always been, that for things to not challenge me. During this full moon, don't be afraid to really carve your own path. Uranus is conjunct the full moon. So we see this need to really define for yourself what even gives you stability and how can you define a stable career, a stable role that you play in society that is maybe different from what everybody else expects of you, but is something that still feeds your soul. Next up, we have Virgo rising and Virgo sun signs. And for Virgos, this full moon in Taurus is happening in the 9th house of travel, education, and the legal system. So it could be during this full moon that it's becoming really clear to you where you've been playing it safe, especially when it comes to those 3 categories. Maybe there's a certain course or a certain college, university that you've signed up for that you now realize is maybe not something your soul truly desires, that you maybe made that decision because it felt comfortable and it felt safe. And then, like I said, keep in mind the 9th house also represents the legal system and travel. So it could be that you are also reflecting on where you've been playing it safe in those 2 areas of your life as well. Don't be afraid to challenge yourself a little bit during this full moon and to carve out what stability means for you. Can that definition be unique to you instead of just following what society has already said? Let's have a chat about Libra risings and Libra sun signs. For the full moon on November 15th, you can expect to be seeing some consequences when it comes to your intimate relationships. Because the full moon is in your 8th house, you might be finding that there are certain things in your intimate relationships where you have prioritized comfort, easiness, stability in place of authenticity. Sometimes being vulnerable and really being open with our partner can feel challenging. When we come home after a long day of work, we just want to chill on the couch, not have difficult conversations. Don't be afraid during this time to really get in touch with what your soul needs and what you need for this deeper fulfillment. And don't be afraid to challenge all of these ways that you put comfort ahead of vulnerability and connection. For Scorpio risings and Scorpio sun signs, the full moon on November 15th will take place in your 7th house. The 7th house is the house of relationships, partnerships, especially one-on-one partnerships. So during this full moon, you'll probably become aware of whether or not you've been playing it safe when it comes to your partnerships, whether or not your partnerships haven't really been equal. You haven't really been equal partners just because it felt more comfortable. Maybe you were more comfortable taking the ownership, or maybe you were more comfortable in the reverse role, letting the partner take the leadership and ownership. This could really become aware. You could really become aware of this during the full moon. Because this full moon is conjunct Uranus, really do take a look at what is your own unique definition of what comfort and safety, stability looks like in a relationship. As I use the example in the general forecast, maybe for you, a stable partnership, an equal partnership, doesn't mean marriage or anything else in that traditional sense. Maybe there's a really unique definition that maybe to society looks a bit strange, but you know that it feeds your soul and challenges it as well. Again, we want to push past any decisions we have made that were just for the sake of comfort. Next up, we have Sagittarius rising and Sagittarius sun signs. For Sagittarius, the full moon in Taurus is taking place in the 6th house of health and routine. So during this full moon, you might be facing the consequences of any areas in your routine or in your health where you're not acting actually out of alignment, where you're acting or making choices based on just wanting things to be easygoing, stable, and comfortable. I cannot help but give the example of sitting on the couch feels a lot more comfortable than going to get up and move our bodies. But during this full moon, we might start to see the consequences of decisions we have made for the sake of comfort, with the primary driver being comfort. And that manifestation, it could be something quite physical, that maybe we feel tired or we find we're getting sick more easily. But again, because we have the north and the south node involved with this full moon, I do think that the manifestation might also really be about the effect it has on our soul, the effect it has on our vigor for life. It might not be that we notice that all of a sudden we can't move our body as easily, but rather the fact that we're not taking care of our health, we don't have a good routine set up, seems to be sort of killing us on the inside. It doesn't feel aligned, it doesn't feel exciting, maybe feels a bit boring. Let's have a chat about Capricorn rising and Capricorn sun signs. Because for you, Capricorn, this full moon is taking place in your 5th house of self-expression and creativity. This full moon is asking you to take a look at whether you have been putting your self-expression in the closet, whether you have been hiding it for the sake of comfort, whether you have been reluctant to express yourself freely, to have fun, to enjoy the pleasures of day-to-day life, because it was something that was more comfortable. Perhaps really expressing joy, expressing what you're thinking, what you're feeling, has at certain times felt challenging. And you might have chosen to go ahead with comfort and security instead. Don't be afraid during this full moon to really take a look at what is your own definition of creativity. How can you express your inner child that's maybe entirely different from what society would expect of you? Maybe the society thinks, yeah, you need to paint, or yeah, you need to dance, but you think, my inner child loved Legos and I'm gonna go do that now. And with this full moon that you're heading in the right direction when the activity that you're doing or the change that you're making gets rid of this feeling of being bored and leads to this feeling of excitement, this feeling of alignment, and this feeling of, wow, this is challenging, but this is really good for me. Next up, we have Aquarius rising and Aquarius sun signs. For Aquarius, the full moon in Taurus is taking place in 4th house of family and home. If you have been defining your familial relationships by what society has set up, by what society has said or expects. If you have been maybe avoiding cultivating a different relationship with your family, changing the family dynamics just because it's something that felt more comfortable, this will become really apparent during this full moon. You might find yourself feeling bored, especially when it comes around your home and around your relationship with your family. And that's how you will know with this full moon that this is something you need to take a look at. This is something that will, if you take a look at it and you spend time thinking, why am I feeling bored? What doesn't excite me here? You can really come away with some good insights as to how you can bring some excitement in, why you have been putting comfort, stability, peace over doing the challenging thing, even though the challenging thing may have been the thing that was much more aligned, much more inspiring, much more invigorating. And finally, we have Pisces rising and Pisces sun signs. Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe next horoscopes, I should start off with Pisces so you don't have to wait until the end. But to be fair, I do timestamps, so you probably just skip to your sign. Anyways, so Pisces sun signs and Pisces rising signs. This full moon on November 15th is taking place in your third house of communication. You might be feeling bored with the way you talk, the things you share with others. It might be coming really apparent to you during this full moon where you've been playing it safe. If there have been certain topics that you've been afraid to bring up because you didn't want to stir the boat, a certain way that you express yourself, maybe in a much more peaceful, easy manner, but you maybe have been avoiding being angry or speaking in a more assertive way. During this full moon, that will become a lot more apparent. And you want to move more towards the parts that maybe feel challenging. Express yourself in a way that feels super unnatural, feels uncomfortable maybe, but you know that deep down it is really good for your evolution. It is much more satisfying and in general the right way to do for you. One more thing I'll add, Pisces, is that the full moon is conjunct Uranus. Maybe there's some individual flair you want to bring to your communication. Maybe this is not even communicating to somebody with words. Maybe you want to write a poem or you want to write a handwritten letter. Don't be afraid to do this in your own unique way. Whatever breaks you out of that mold of comfort, but in the end feels much more exciting and invigorating. So that was everything for this full moon in Taurus. I hope you're excited for it. And honestly, if I could provide one piece of advice, is take note where you feel bored. Take note where you feel stuck. Take a note where you feel like things are just too comfortable and I need to shake things up a little bit. Whatever feels uncomfortable is probably around this time the right thing to do. It will feel weird. It might feel like it's not something that you usually do. You might feel a bit clumsy at it. But do trust that in the long run, this is the way it's supposed to go and that this is good for your evolution and for your growth. Thanks for joining me. Don't forget, if you want a little bit more understanding of all of the other energies in November, like Pluto going direct, Pluto entering Aquarius and Saturn going direct, I did post dedicated November horoscopes for all of the rising signs. I'll leave them right here for you so you can check them out. Again, thanks for joining me. Enjoy the full moon, and I hope to see you again soon.